final patient's experience. So full commitment on the work.
Is it safe to travel? How is it COVID-wise? Is it safe?
Quite safe, yes. I'm just taking the trains where all the people are distanced. I'm trying to avoid crowds, but still it's almost under control, hopefully.
Good to hear that.
Great. Hello, Kavya.
Hello, and
Hey.
good to see you, Valentino.
Yeah, I found a little time. I'm just right now in Padova. I'm coming from Genova. Tomorrow I'm going to Naples. So I'm just traveling like crazy right now, but it's okay.
Yeah, well, we found you at a good time around the child safety stuff, but it's all on pause at the moment, just getting all things in order. But yeah, we'll resume very, very soon.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will
see.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Hey, Sarah.
Yeah, no, I see Sarah, Bob.
Hi.
Liz. Hey, Liz. And I really hope Skip and Dr. Greenleaf can join us. If not, then we would have to send them recordings. But first of all, a massive congratulations, and wow, you blew away. I don't care what in the world anybody believes, Sarah, you did a fantastic, remarkable, historical, amazing job with what you accomplished. That is absolutely phenomenal. I was just watching the event in the awe of what you pulled off. That is so remarkable, especially with the UK government. It's like so bureaucratic and stuff. Bravo.
Oh, thank you. I feel like it hasn't sunk in yet. I'm just very tired. Very tired.
It was a very massive lift getting all these people. Yeah. And I hope XRSI did its part and wasn't too tedious for you to coordinate.
Oh, no, you guys were great. You were great. I've never done a report like this before, so I think it was a big learning effort, but I think there's just so much knowledge that everyone has. It's just like amazing just seeing it all together. But I think we kind of looked at your chapter and we're like, this needs to be its own report, doesn't it? So we're just speaking to people now about more reports, more research, but actually being able to fund all of the recommendations now as well. Yeah. So if you are keen to still be involved, we would obviously love to.
Are you kidding? Absolutely. Count us in. And one thing I think we could learn from you, Sarah.
Generic women's names. It's all good.
I have never. I don't know, but I'll make more effort. So yeah, but it would be great to learn from you how to fund some of the efforts that we're putting together, especially this framework. And yeah, I mean, we're already 4 minutes into it. If we want to get started, Ryan, and then, perhaps we can ask all the people that are here at the end, what are the potential funding avenues and what all could we get out of it?
Sure thing. I'm trying to see if I can share my screen here. So if that's okay. I guess you have to enable screen sharing for me.
Try now. Recording if you can.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so I should have the screen up here now. Does everybody see what I'm seeing?
Yep.
Good, okay. Yeah, so I'll just get started. I guess we're not gonna try to wait for Skip or Dr.
Yeah, we might have to send them recordings. You could put it on present mode if you wanted from the top.
Secure.
There we go.
Okay, so I'm just going to take a few minutes at the start of the meeting to just quickly go over what we've come up with so far for our framework in the past month or so. Just before we get too far, Our team is currently Kavya, myself, and Rachel. As it, obviously Kavya and Rachel started out with Mark, and he's no longer working with us. But we're now have invited a new person named Elena, who's been incredibly helpful just the last few days in putting this together. So I just wanted to acknowledge her help as well. So I'll just dive right in. So we're looking at, over the last 20 years, we've had devices converge into a single device. We're probably all intimately familiar with this concept, where our phones can do so many things that used to be done by a host of other devices. And this has kind of concentrated a lot of power and responsibility in the hands of some very small groups, namely Apple and Samsung and all these people, Google, that we depend on to handle what was once a massive ecosystem of all kinds of different companies, is now kind of concentrated into one sort of device. We have a different way of doing business now as a result. What we've seen happen, as we're all aware because we're all in VR, is that similar trends are happening where devices are converging, entire areas of practice are converging and working together more than ever. Neuropsychology, for example, is a big one I've witnessed over the last 10 years. But what we're seeing here is these practices and therapies and assessment tools are all kind of showing up in VR as we're watching many companies like XR Health and Penumbra and different massive companies are starting to realize the capabilities of VR and just starting to, attempt these sorts of things over the last 10 years. So what that has done is it's sort of blurred the lines between a device that can do therapy, assessments and treatments in contexts that have previously not been available to those kinds of treatments, like at home or integrated into games, or as just on a device that otherwise provides entertainment. And of course, the capabilities of VR are constantly growing. We're having better eye tracking, better biometric recording, and human-machine interactions, better AI, better machine learning, interaction with social media, and having all of these things converge in, again, one device that a person can have at home. So as this convergence is occurring, there's an opportunity to create kind of a common platform or a common series of standards that everyone has to adhere to ensure that patient data is kept private and safe. And at XRSI, we believe that everybody has a shared responsibility to make that happen, including patients themselves. But in order for patients to do it, they need to be empowered with knowledge and tools. So we see XRSI as at the center of this convergence to protect privacy and safety of patients, as we have been doing with consumer data prior to the medical framework. So, this is sort of how we're positioning ourselves as a central point around which all of these things can converge and maintain privacy and safety for patient data. So obviously privacy in terms of constant capture of biometric data, video data, audio data, head position, hand position, all these additional data is over what a phone can do, sort of everything a phone can do, and then all the positional data and the additional stuff you can derive from VR context. as well as the opportunities, of course, of having VR and having unprecedented precision in biometric data capture and being able to present, unlimited environments and visual stimuli to people and audio stimuli presents both opportunities and risks. So in order to create this framework, I've generally started to create sort of some broad strokes, like we have to come up with some kind of ethical foundation. We've thrown out 4 ideas here as concepts, but we'd love to collaborate with people and go out into the world and find out, what kinds of things should be included in here that we don't have, or how we should word these things. We've also come up with a starting point for an implementation plan. So, we get stakeholders and community involved. We look at all the medical XR and related technologies. We have come up with a scorecard to rate experiences and therapies and treatments against the privacy and safety checkboxes that we'll come up with, or we're calling them scores for now. And then we would commit to regular evaluation and compliance for XRSI approved products. And then products and services that meet our requirements would be able to enjoy greater trust and security for their customers and patients in general. And then the final broad stroke is limiting the scope. So just making sure we understand exactly why we're doing what we're doing and what we do and don't do. So we're sticking for now with privacy and data protection. We're not going to venture into trying to evaluate the effectiveness of any kind of therapy or treatment. Limiting data protection to specific use cases, and then determining how we're going to report on audit results publicly. So obviously there's going to be a lot of concerns about making sure some of the reporting information is kept confidential, but we also want to make sure our customers and all patients and everyone is aware of the levels of compliance among everybody that is displaying our logo. So that's where we currently sit right now. We started on a document which I'll show just briefly after this. But at this point, we're presenting to the council because we're looking for collaborators to help us, write this document and, offer from expertise, like what we should be including, what we shouldn't be including, what we should consider, and helping us back up some of the points we're making with documents and papers and research and things like that. So you can either link us to research that's out there ideally, or we can look at coming up with new research projects that are all part of the process of creating this framework. So is there any questions at this point before I just briefly show the document, or? Let's check the chat here. So not hearing any questions. So I can just run over to the document if I can figure out how to. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a second and I'll move over to the Word doc.
And I think if in the meantime, Sarah, could you please share with us how you did this UK report collaboration? also any lessons that you may have learned, because it's a very similar collaborative effort, but much of it could also include some novel research coming from various entities, just like we did with XRSI. If you don't mind sharing some of those lessons and overall process that you went through.
Do you mean like how we found the collaborators and contributors that were involved in writing it, or the funders, or both?
Yeah, basically all of it, like finding, so first you found the collaborators, then you found the funders, and then you found like, what that process was like and how did you collaborate globally with this, and if any lessons for us to be careful of, and, maybe a similar process could be adopted and stuff like that.
Good question. I'll give a go at answering. I don't know how useful any of it is, because I guess with any projects there was a lot of winging it and luck, and yeah, of course, learning things along the way.
Sure.
I think at least for the work that we did, I think it worked really nicely having like us, like the three of us that kind of co-led on the report, and having Ross, who's from the NHS and really gets things from a clinical and healthcare perspective that is embedded in those environments. I think he's the associate director. Oh God, I've written down his job title so many times and I've forgotten it. But he does a lot of work in like technology, the technology side of the NHS. So he really understands that perspective. And then having Fiona, who's got more experience working in government or working with government funded organisations, because she ran Immerse UK before this and has done lots of industry consulting. And then I guess me being like the weirdo in the middle that sort of like oscillates between the two, but also makes things as well and has that perspective. I think just having like quite a small team that are quite interdisciplinary. And I think here again, like, I mean, that's the real value of this group, I feel like, is having people that understand the cybersecurity aspects, the research, the medical. But I think like possibly for this, then having somebody that is very much embedded in how patient data is managed, be it in the US or Europe. Because I guess the challenge here is that there are so many different platforms that XR exists on, and that is going to ultimately change how patient or how data is collected and reviewed, and like how that works with organizations like Unity. I know this isn't the question, but I think, yeah, just thinking about all these different stakeholders could be really helpful. And also just doing like a stakeholder map of just understanding like who is out there that perhaps is relevant. I guess, yeah, with the collaborators, we wanted to just have like a really diverse group of contributors that were either implementing VR in clinical settings or researchers that are then translating their work to there, and people from industry as well. And then from a funder's perspective, it was a lot of hustling. It was a lot of hustling, a lot of no's. I think I originally approached the creative director of Ninja Theory and asked him for like 3 times the amount of budget that we ended up working with in the end. But it's just like getting that one yes from somebody, I guess. And I think, what we're doing here with the advisory council is really important, and these are really big questions that are a blocker for this innovation, because people are obviously very anxious about how this information can be exploited. And so I think having that key like proposal of like why this is really important, which we all know, and perhaps, yeah, between all of us, it could be really helpful just to do a little bit of stakeholder mapping of who is in this space and sort of sectioning it out into, is it insurance companies that might fund this? Is it pharmaceutical companies? And then perhaps from there, like whittling it down to like who might be like the best collaborators or supporters or funders. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, super helpful.
Definitely.
Because what is the hype at the moment then? So sorry if I've misunderstood, it's late and I'm a bit. But so the hope that is with like this framework is that we're looking for funding to be able to undertake the research, do like a really in-depth analysis of like these opportunities and start to like build it up as an offering that will be made available to companies, and then they would then pay XRSI to help them become compliant, as well as having these kind of guidelines that are available for everyone, and sort of creating a unified way of being able to assess XR experiences for healthcare.
That's pretty much, yeah, that's pretty much it. So like I think if I could break it down to two phases, the first one would be like, internally, I call it internally, but it's like internal and external stakeholders pooling in knowledge, just like we did with the UK report, and that would include case studies. This is where the vendors are going to be important, because we need them to provide case studies to kind of evaluate against what we are building side by side. So just like, putting it in parallel, like, okay, this applies, this does not apply. So that ways we would, synthesize the scope. It's one thing to just think about it or be aspirational. It's a whole another thing to actually basically say, okay, this is what works. So doing that would be the phase one, just curating what this framework is. So once the framework is, the commencement, the official commencement of this work will begin on August 4th, where I have a keynote talk at SimGhost conference. And then at least 3-4 of us from the council are speaking at SimGhost conference. That's where we'll also like reiterate the importance and what we launched at that time. And that's when an active open collaboration will begin with all the use cases, all the people that want to get involved. Leading up to that 4th of August, if we can find people who are willing to provide some financial support as well as resources. So for example, currently we don't have a project manager. So if you have any recommendation for a project manager, we may be able to fund that up to like $1,000, but beyond that, it's really out of reach for a nonprofit. But of course, if somebody wants to volunteer in that capacity just to get their name involved and stuff, that would be even more wonderful. So, getting the resources lined up would be the objective all the way up to 4th of August. And then on 4th of August, we go ahead and say to the industry that this is real, this is happening, this is your time to come together and get involved. And we'll provide them, ways to get involved. And Ryan and I, we will do potentially weekly working session. Ryan, and any other things that you want to add to it? But yeah, I think potential like weekly working sessions, analyzing and evaluating case studies that are coming through, and whatever exchange of knowledge could happen. If we are successful, then in December, there are 2 key events that are happening. And in November, we have a full track with Augmented World Expo in Santa Clara, also a keynote panel, which please keep it confidential, but we are going to have potentially, Government of Australia, somebody from European Parliament, as well as a key senator from the United States, as well as a C-level executive or a executive position from Facebook and potentially from Niantic or somebody from like one other big tech. So this would be like quite a lit panel. This would be the keynote day 1 panel. And then the day 2 would be an entire track dedicated to safety and privacy. So that is what XRSI is doing at AWE. We don't know if we will be ready by November, but that could be one place where we could potentially launch this. I don't really prefer that. I would rather prefer to launch it in December. So 6th to 10th of December would be a XR Safety Awareness Week. We're looking for potentially a particular government. Most likely it's going to be Government of Australia that will adopt the Safety Awareness Week as the National XR Safety Awareness Week. This could be any other government as well, as many governments as we can get. We're working with some bipartisan committee to try to get this adopted. So, and EFF is also involved. With EFF, we're going to celebrate, of course, the XR Safety Week is XRSI's, but the last day of the XR Safety Week is going to be Human Rights Day for AR/VR, which will be collaborative effort between EFF and XRSI. So between those 4 days of the week, one of the days is dedicated to medical XR, and that could be our launch event. Between now and December, we may or may not do a flagship event. It all depends on, whether we have the bandwidth, because we're doing a lot of work in different directions. So if we don't have the bandwidth, then, XR Safety Week is the only opportunity. But if we do have the bandwidth, right after XR Safety Week, we'll follow with a flagship event for XRSI. And if we are successful there, then, definitely end of December or December would be the way to launch this fully.
Kavya?
XR Day. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Hey, good to see you all. And Sarah, I'm not up to speed at all on your presentation the other day or the report, but look forward to looking at it all. It's just been a crazy week. Kavya, just if you have interest, we're committed to our European event in Dublin on December 2nd and 3rd. We have our space, contract is signed. If you have interest, and I think, there are a number of different connections we can try, but you might want to try the Irish government, and you could do a launch there, probably with people in person, and even get some good PR news coverage, at least from the state of Ireland, maybe the UK as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of money from the Irish government going into immersive, especially around health and immersive as well. Could be worth speaking to Fiona about it. I can put you guys in touch because she's part of the Ireland Immersive Board.
With 6 months, I think you got plenty of time to get it organized, probably with the people that you would like. I mean, maybe you can get the Prime Minister of Ireland, or everybody's central in Dublin, so they're probably like a few blocks from where the conference is.
That's great. So I think then 2 action items could be, Rachel, we could meet Fiona and ask her about guidance towards what could we collaborate with the UK. And of course, we're meeting Richard Price to discuss the same thing from the HEE perspective. If they want to fund or pull in any resource, or at the very minimum, they're already sharing their own, during COVID, they formed some kind of a model for learning, and that is going to be absorbed into this framework 100%. So that's there. But yeah, we'll meet Richard Price. We can certainly set up another meeting with Fiona, talking about.
Should we just do one meeting together?
We could.
We're all working together, and it seems like a more efficient use of everyone's time. So
sure. Rachel, when are we meeting Richard?
Richard's is next Wednesday. It's on the calendar. I can try to add Fiona if
Fiona and Sarah, of course.
Yeah, if you let me know the time, I'll drop Fiona a message.
Perfect.
But yeah, it'd be good to have an
see.
opportunity to debrief, and if Ross could be some help as well.
Yeah, and I think Bob brings up a great point, is we have seen how deeply United States government cares about privacy and stuff. And even with FDA's proactive effort to do medical XR stuff, there is still some major gap. And that's kind of where we're going to fit in, is to really try to connect the XR with the medical industry. So really turning it into medical XR privacy and safety, sort of a baseline, like drawing a line in the sand and then continuously iterating and evolving over time as things develop, as things become more and more prevalent. So yeah, Bob, this is something very, very, totally under consideration. And what we can do is we can share this sort of a slide deck with you. We can add some contact information there. Do you think that it is worthwhile to create a form online where people could go and submit? I mean, we do have a get involved form on the website, but if you want, there is a separate form that if you want to contribute to medical XR, we could just literally specifically add that field in there, so that anybody who is contributing to medical XR could like drop down to medical XR framework and then could reach us that way.
You mean on ticket registration?
Not the ticket registration, just for the framework contribution, because we're soliciting people to contribute to this framework, just getting the stakeholders involved. Because otherwise it would be one-on-one email back and forth. Instead, we could just, you could just say, hey, here's a slide deck, XRSI is doing this, and you can go to this link and add your name to it, and they'll reach out.
Yeah, actually, I think honestly, what would work better, I think, is if you get me some banner ads, I can give you the designs, but it would be better drive traffic back to your site and let people get more info, download, contribute there. But I can run those ads on the IVR site, and just they'll cycle with other ads and stuff, but that's not a big deal.
Perfect.
I guess my question for all of this is like, to what is the goal of this, and like what would be the input that we want? Because I think there's always like lots of enthusiasm from people, but also you can very easily get into a situation where you just have like loads of people that said they're up for helping, and then you have to like manage that and also find out like what kind of contributions you want. So I think there could be some really interesting opportunities for, even putting like some sort of survey questions out, getting an understanding of the landscape, what kind of data people are gathering, like how they're currently managing that. But it could easily just wind up that you just have all this information, and I think like using people's time.
Right.
But I know you have that in mind already. I also wanted to add as well, I don't know if you saw the recent news, but Hugo Barra, who's the VP of Facebook Reality Labs, has left and is now pivoting into healthcare as well. So I think that's interesting, and perhaps could be an interesting ally. I don't know if he's staying in the XR space or not. But
he's left Facebook. He's left FRL.
Yeah, he just did a post a couple of days ago, but he said that basically he's leaving Facebook to get into the health tech space. So I've already spammed him I sent him a message. It was just
You're a hero.
Good timing.
Yay.
What are you doing?
Hey, if he's looking to get into medical XR, he'd be a great ally to be even a council member with all his knowledge around FRL stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, in his post, he said, been thinking about what's been happening in the pandemic, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, want to do stuff in the health tech space and help people. It's very long. I won't read the whole thing. But anyway, very interesting. He could be an interesting and useful ally, especially if it comes to fundraising.
Yeah, exactly. I hope I would be able to apply what I've learned from working in consumer tech industry to help solve meaningful problems in healthcare world. That just literally says he wants to join Medical XR Council. So I think this is a great, thank you, Sarah. I think that's a great person to contact. If you have been, he's got open DMs. I could spam him too a little bit. And if you make contact, please refer them to XRSI. And or just connect us both, and I'll try to do the same from my end. Whoever is successful, let's get them.
Cool.
If I may comment on the ending up with too many people and not being able to compartmentalize who does what, I think we have a couple of directions that we were considering. There are vendors that we would want to use for use cases, and that would be a separate effort from the contributors pool of people. So what the previous conversation with Bob probably would be regarding the use cases participants, because they'd be vendors. I would imagine some of them would be vendors. So we will have multiple efforts to reach out to these people.
Yeah, I think we would have to strategize a little bit as to which buckets. And I think, Sarah, the form is a kind, how you're suggesting like a form could be a really good, not a form, but just like a survey could be a good starting point. So let's say somebody says, hey, I'm a vendor, I want to get involved. Then we could direct them to a particular like a survey item where we would ask them, so how are you currently doing stuff? What exactly the functionalities that you are looking to contribute or evaluate? let's say they have finger tracking, or they have, brain computer interfaces that intersect with XR. So at least with that survey item, we would at least scope out what all expertise is needed in the space. Because BCI analysis is a whole another game, which we have researchers that we're working with, especially University of New Haven. This is actually not out yet, but they actually discovered some adversarial AI-based hacks to hack brain-computer interfaces. While they may not directly today be combined with XR, but it inevitably raises question as to when people are using BCI with XR, this is going to, if it can be hacked, that means we gotta at least tell the world that, by the way, all excited about BCI, this is hackable. And that especially coming from academic research is a solid point. This is the same thing like we talked about the novel attacks in XR, in VR, that University of New Haven had discovered, like they can move the subject, they can disable the safety boundaries and that kind of stuff. So these type of research will be really important to discuss, because gaming is a whole, it's okay, gaming, somebody can move a person, but when you're performing a surgery and you can be interfered with or moved or something, then it's a whole another level of threat and liability, whether people have considered that or not. So I think first step could be survey. What do you think, Ryan? Like as soon as somebody, especially a vendor, comes in, we give them a outline survey. What that survey would look like, we could curate those contents with Elena and put that survey together, and to kind of streamline, okay, which type of a working session should they be part of, or should they be part of every single working group and whatnot. Make sense?
Definitely.
Cool. So yeah, if you want to go ahead and share the GDoc. So at the moment, from today all the way to 4th of August, I would say 1st of August instead, what we really ask the council members is to critique as well as add anything that they deem appropriate to what is already on this paper. And this will help us solidify that framework, methodology, scope, stakeholders. So we've put some together, but it is absolutely open for discussion, open for edit. And until we have the final full blessing from each of the member, we won't go out and say, this is the way. So in order to say, this is the XRSI way, it has to be blessed by each and every member of the council. So that's what Ryan is presenting. And we did our little bit of a critique in there, starting from zero, and we'll continue to do so. But we invite each and every council member to go into this doc and then be able to just like edit, modify, add some research, or add some thoughts, whatever you want to do. So go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, that's it. So the document is pretty bare bones at the moment. I may do a share again. And go to it. So at this point, we've just got a basic outline that we do an executive summaries, indications for use, kind of parroting medical device standards. We'll list the stakeholders, create a taxonomy, which is, a definition of terms, but also how the terms relate to each other. And then describe the actual framework itself, how it works. And, we're starting with 5 basic areas, which is here, based on our scoring idea. So, if you physically separate patient biometric data from patient identifiable metadata via hash ID, that gets you a point. And then, if you're always informing the patient continuously throughout the experience to the greatest extent you can, especially whenever data is on the move, doing everything you can to keep the patient informed as you go, as opposed to a giant unreadable contract at the beginning with a checkbox at the bottom. This is something that needs to be, the patient has to be consistently aware of what's going on. So these are just ideas we've come up with so far as to what could constitute a point that we look for. And then if you get a certain score, that's the extent to which you're in compliance with the XRSI framework. So what we're looking for from you folks and anyone you think could be expert and would be interested in contributing would be things like this, like whether you think the score points we've picked are valid, if you have other ideas, whether or not you like the idea of scoring or you have a different way of doing audits and evaluations that you think would be worth considering. So we've shared the document with everyone. We're pretty transparent. You can see all the comments and everything that's in the conversations. Feel free to join in and give your opinions. And then these are areas where, you know, as we get researchers and people to come on and help us, we can start to create case studies and methodologies that can emerge from those. And then just references and stuff. And then we have some internal notes that, you know, where we're just taking down people's comments and different kinds of things we should be considering, like 7G opening up, we've heard about, and what effect would that have, the extreme bandwidth, and you know, just different other ways of vulnerability and what vulnerability could do, like Kavya recently just mentioned there, which is also in the book VRX. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. I can put a link to that in the chat as well, where it's definitely addressing both the positive potential power of VR, being able to, you know, manipulate a person physically, but also the potential threat that could represent if someone could hack in and, you know, you can actually physically affect somebody. So this is just down here where we're keeping that sort of thing going. So feel free to take a look at the document when you have time, and we would love your input.
Ryan, one thing I did not see in the scoring, and I didn't point that out before, was the accessibility consideration. I don't know if we separately, but maybe would it be worthwhile to add accessibility consideration within the evaluation of it? Or is it then going away from privacy and safety?
Well, yeah, to the extent that accessibility affects a person's ability to be able to give informed consent or to understand what's going on with their data, you know, that could vary anywhere from just cognitive ability to understand communication to, you know, language issues. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's definitely relevant to the scope of patient safety and privacy.
Maybe we could put it under 002, you know, the second one, where it's like, it's not just TOS style checkbox, but accessibility considerations are made within the context. And because within each of these scoring, there will be a detailed checklist of items that the vendor would be evaluated against.
Yep. So like, you know, avoiding large stretches of words and trying to use as many symbols as you can, or universally recognized symbols. Yeah, just things like that. And also not relying on, you know, being able to see color. Right. Or, you know, things like that. So
yeah, providing enough time to review stuff. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So if everybody who does not have access to this document, both the documents actually, if you could, especially the GDoc actually, because the slide deck, I will turn it into a PDF and we'll share it with the council with the notes of today. But if you could just put in your email address in the chat, So I'll add it to provide access to the master document.
Yeah, and I think if you try to access the document and you can't, it'll give you an option to request access. So we're certainly happy to do that as well, if you want to do it that way. And we'll just provide approval to anyone who asks from the council.
Perfect. So Ryan, I'm actually adding Sarah, Valentino. And Valentino, I wonder, in all of this framework, specific to children's safety, I would look to you in the 003 part, because it's not just about having a person next to the child, but maybe there are other considerations that are critical to child safety stuff. And you don't have to answer it right now, but as you look at this draft and critique this draft, this is something, if you could think about and provide some guidance on, would be great.
Okay, absolutely.
And then as it remains, connecting to all the stakeholders is one of the main goals of building up to all the way to August 1st. And then potentially bringing in more and more case studies. One thing I want to ask you, Sarah, because and this is why you are so important at the council, and so is Valentino, because you guys are the people who have built products that are medical XR products. What do you feel, how do you feel about such a framework, evaluating your product in such a way? Is this something you feel, oh, wow, this is great, it's going to help me now gain more trust and gather, easily do sales calls that, we are now trusted and validated by XRSI. You could put that badge in your privacy policy. How do you feel about this whole effort and, being a part of this kind of thing? From a product perspective, from a vendor or sales perspective? And I know I've asked this question before, but I just wanted to, with the details in front of us, how do you feel?
Sarah, please.
I was going to be like, Valentino. It's definitely very helpful, which is why I'm here and think it's very important. But I think I'm going to articulate this really badly, but I'm going to give it a go. But I think the thing for me that I'm trying to understand, because I haven't commercialized yet, like we're still in like R&D land, and I'm actually like working more towards bringing Hatsumi to art festivals because that's where I'm at. But I think the thing that I hope that we don't miss here, which is really important, is how XRSI collaborates with healthcare organizations and medical councils, because this is the main reason that I ended up doing the stuff that led to this report, is that whilst it's great that we've got the guidelines here, that doesn't actually like necessarily have any implications for me as a health tech company operating in the UK, or for Valentino as a health tech company operating in Italy. Like, we need to make sure that it's compliant with local healthcare regulation guidelines and think about how we would work with local medical patient records. So for example, here we have the MRHA, which is like the medical healthcare regulation authorities or whatever, and NICE, the National Institute of Care Excellence, and they've got all of these different guidelines that and then it's all in the report, and DTAC, which is the new digital technology acceptance criteria and stuff. I think I've just completely butchered all of those names. But anyway, there are all these guidelines that exist for digital health that are fine, but don't necessarily work with XR. And so these are the kind of recommendations that we're putting in the report, is that there are specific guidelines that need to be created for XR, but we need to work with these organizations to create it. So I think there's so much knowledge in this group which is invaluable to people like them, but I think we need to think about how we work with them, be it in the US or Europe or the UK, which is no longer part of Europe because we're silly, and the rest of the world.
Yeah. No, I from my perspective, I think that there is a huge complexity in privacy and safety. So this complexity is challenging to grasp at the early beginning of a startup and while distributing a commercial solution. So first of all, it's definitely useful for a company to better approach and understand this complexity. And while XRSI is growing in knowledge and in impact, it is also growing as an opportunity to us as a company, because we can say, yes, please refer to the XRSI. We are following those guidelines. And that is great to us, and that is great also for our customers. And as Sarah said, it's very important to provide knowledge about the field, because the leading companies in the sector, so pharma companies, medtech companies, and hospitals, they don't understand virtual reality. First of all, they don't understand how it works, and then they don't understand the complexity of safety, privacy, and data. So a framework like this is fundamental to make them aware of this technology, which is something that helps us to approach them and them to search for solutions like ours. So yes, it's definitely useful. But it's all about the network effect. It's important for the XRSI to be transversal, international, because there are many solutions, many critical issues. So it's important to be international, and XRSI is international. So that's great.
Yeah, and by the time this framework comes into effect, we will have XRSI EU formed. So we will have a official presence in the EU. One thing Liz and Rachel, maybe we could create a Excel sheet. We could share with our council members as well, where we could put, and Sarah's report has all these entities that she was trying to list out, get the accurate names. Sorry, Sarah, not picking on you, but yeah, those words can be confusing. So put their names, get the representative that potentially we can connect with. We send them the deck, we send them the ask, which is one is to come work with us. But the second thing is we want to find alignment with the existing regulations and laws that they are putting together. A couple of working sessions with those entities could literally hash that out. And we could find that alignment with, let's say, Irish folks and with the UK. So first we line up these entities, then we set up some kind of meeting with them if they are actively involved or passively involved. In the passive case, we just set up a couple of meetings and just put side by side, this is the XRSI effort and this is your existing regulation, and we synthesize it. And then we go meet with them, and that ways we can find that alignment one by one, go through all of them and start to work with that. So it's not just like FDA only or HHS only. I'll reach out to Barry Buton, who might be really familiar with a lot of these agencies, who could potentially give us some context as well. And any other persons that you believe are connected to these global regulatory boots on the ground type of organization that do make these laws and regulation, would be lovely to connect with them. And then we'll set up, one-on-one meetings, or if they just want to be in the trenches, then they can just get involved and they'll come to the weekly working sessions.
I'll start a spreadsheet. I actually did start one, so
perfect.
I'll enhance it and send it around.
Excellent. We have 4 minutes left. Any questions? And this report is really, the report that Sarah has worked on is really going to be a foundational ground. Like, this really is the writing on the wall as to how we should now think through. And it really, I'm so impressed with the overall work in there. It also has captured the case studies, just like we want to capture. These thoughts existed in our mind, but when I saw the report come through, it is exactly kind of the approach we want to take, is include case studies. So this is an opportunity for vendors to highlight themselves and be a part of this framework, and for the rest of the time this framework would exist, their use cases will become as the key highlight of the framework that they are pre-evaluated, which will give them such an upper hand when they approach a regulator or a massive client, or if they approach Facebook and they say, hey, we have already evaluated it against XRSI framework, and this is what we're doing with respect to privacy. That gives them, I mean, I know because I used to be that person who these vendors would have to go through in 2016 to get business from billion-dollar company like Facebook. I know that this is a type of a stuff that I would already just put as a gatekeeping mechanism, like go comply with XRSI and then come, I'll work with you. So hopefully we will get to that stage where it becomes the de facto standard in terms of medical XR privacy. We do want to find a way into Microsoft, especially the healthcare side. So if anybody knows Microsoft XR folks, that is going to be really important. Sarah.
Yes. Because this is something I wanted to mention. I don't know if you're aware that they've just launched the new Holomedicine Association.
Yep. Jeremy actually is, Jeremy Nelson, who is one of our liaison at University of Michigan, is part of it. He's a founding member.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Anyone else you think?
Yeah, well, I've been speaking to a guy called Joe Verasso, who's at Microsoft, who we've been talking to about the report. I could introduce you to him if that's helpful. He's a bit more of like the sales guy, that seems to also be one of the gatekeepers that is inviting in founding members. It feels a bit clinical boys club, but it's early days, I guess. So at the moment, they're basically only inviting in clinicians to be a part of it. And there does seem to be a diversity issue, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I saw their founding members and it was all dudes.
I mean, that's just the name of the game with this stuff. Not that it is going to continue to be that way, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there's a particular pitch or angle or that you'd like me to introduce you, then I can put you in touch with the UK Microsoft lot.
Yeah. Sarah, just lastly, is there anybody in the UK side, there is going to be this panel for privacy and safety, but do you think somebody from the government of UK would want to be a part of it on the stage? Because we've got EU Parliament, US government and Australian government. I know we don't want to add more people, but just in case if somebody cancels, that would be a slot that would open where we only want a female though. That is the request from Australian government as well. And so not everybody is like XRSI who holds the door until a female or a minority walks in, but we are one of those people who would literally just, I would rather leave a chair empty than put 5 dudes on there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think there'll probably be quite a few people.
Yeah, if something comes to your mind, just, ping me and then we could resume the conversation there.
Yeah. Well, with, I don't know, everything that's happening with the report, I think the dust is essentially just settling at the moment. And what we're doing is arranging a whole bunch of follow-up teams, follow-up meetings with the government and the NHS, and then hoping to bring them together. But there is an interest in doing more follow-up research. A lot of that will be around data and safety and mapping. So let's just keep talking because there could be some opportunities there for this research or other work going forward as well.
Great. Perfect. So we'll send out these communication notes and the slide deck and some action items listed as some ask from the members. And yeah, thank you, everyone.
Cool. Good to see you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, folks. Yeah.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Rachel, we did take all these notes, right? We copied over.
Notes.
Okay. No, notes. There are some things in the chat. We copied them over, right?
Oh, I didn't do that. No.
Hold
on a second. Are we still in there?
Let me